Welcome to all of those of you who are new here. I am about to review episode 6 and episode 7 for The Legend of Korra. And I have to say, what the heck did I watch? It's not bad, it's just that it's not meandering either. I'll say that much, but underwhelming isn't the word either. It seemed that after everything that happened in the last few episodes, this was a real slowdown from what we've been watching so far. And none of this is going to make any sense until I actually get into the review. So, as always, like, favorite, subscribe. Most of you probably will not make it through this video, which is why I'm saying this now. As a matter of fact, most of you probably didn't make it to this part of the video. But if you did, good on you. Most importantly, put that comment down below. My viewers are the best. So that I can take it, put it in our discussion section that we have at the very end of this, and we could do that at Roundup. Speaking of which, if you want to skip ahead to the discussion section, I'm going to put the annotation around here, probably right here. I still haven't figured out the in-video programming that well, so I'll put the time here, and you can fast forward if you want. But I suggest that you watch the review first, as always. So, let's get started. Episode 5 really was the setup for episode 6, and it really hammered home that the Beifong sisters do not like each other. Lin feels that Suyin is responsible. She's the driving force that caused their family to break apart, and Suyin feels that her sister has deliberately kept their family apart because she cannot get over what happened. And you have to wonder to yourself, what is it that happened between these two that caused this terrible, terrible conflict? Because at the end of this throughout the entire episode 5, Lin is bitter and irrational and angry. And right at the end, we see her break down into tears. Lin Beifong, tough as nails, did not give an inch when Amon was taking away her metal bending. She is crying over something that happened with her sister 30 years ago. Think about that. 3 decades passed. If you wanted to count, how do I explain this in terms of time? If you wanted to count from 1 to a billion, if you counted one number every second, it would take you 32 years to get there. So they have not talked to each other for almost the same amount of time as it takes to count to a billion. A billion. Think about that. I'm not even 30 yet. I cannot picture what 30 years down the road from here is going to look like. So, think about she did not speak to her sister for 30 years. What could possibly have happened that you do not speak to someone for 30 years? I have family members who haven't spoken to each other for upwards of 55 years, right? So I know when something goes down, it has to be major. So you're like, what did Suyin do? It turns out, stupid teenage drama. Stupid teenage drama is the reason that these two haven't spoken to each other for 30 years. Basically, Lin Beifong is on the straight, she's the narrow, she's the prim, and she's the proper, right? Suyin, on the other hand, is running with a crowd that's not good. I wouldn't say they're a bad crowd. They're kind of like worse versions of Young Mako and Young Bolin. And what basically ends up happening is she commits a minor crime, nothing major, but basically what happens is Toph tells Suyin she has to leave the city. She covers up the crime, and then about a year later she resigns. And Lin blames Suyin for her mother's resignation. She feels that her mother resigned in disgrace, and all this other stuff. This is the reason. I mean, it's not even like Suyin went and did something major. Without spoiling it, she participated in a robbery in the minorest way possible. She was associated with with a robbery. That's it. That's all that happened. It's nothing. It's not like she killed someone or like ripped off the president. It's not like any of that happened. No. It's minor kid stuff, right? The stupid things that people do when they're 16. I'm 24. I used to do stupid shit when I was 16. I'm sure that there's other people watching this. Look back to the year of your 16. You did something silly. Younger people, if you're 14 or 13 or 15 watching it, why are you watching this? But if you're watching this, guess what? 16's coming. You're doing stupid stuff now. You're going to do stupid stuff in the future. It happens. It happens to all of us. But this is the reason that Lynn has not spoken to her sister, that Lynn has not reconciled with her sister. And basically, she's had this image of her sister for 30 years. And we hear that. She basically the two of them, they confront each other finally. They end up fighting. And she goes, "You haven't changed. You're still the same person." Now, time out. Your sister was 16 when that incident happened. She's now 46. It's not physically possible for you to be the same person you were at 16 at the age of 46. I'm 24 now. I'm not the same person I was when I was 16. It's the experiences that you have force you to change your mindset. I mean, it's not possible. She's not thinking properly. She's so bitter and riled up. And Suyin basically says, no, I'm not the one who hasn't changed. You're the one who hasn't changed. You're still a loner. You're still bitter. You're still riled up. We worked this out years ago. Me and Mom worked this out years ago. But if you had bothered to show up, you could have been part of this, and all of this would have been fine. But no, you're the one who decided to stay in Republic City and be whatever it was, right? So basically, the two of them are brawling it out. Korra's like, should I break them up? Bolin has probably the wisest words of this episode, which is weird because right up to that point he's acting like an idiot. But as soon as Korra asks him advice, it's suddenly, oh, here's the wise sibling. He's like, no, siblings fighting. This is part of the making up, which is absolutely true. It is absolutely true. And so the two of them fight. They brawl. Opal eventually breaks it up. Lynn blacks out. She wakes up 16 hours later, and she's fine. She and her sister, they meet up at another statue of Toph. Just statues of Toph everywhere. They destroy half of the house in this episode, which is pretty cool. But yeah, they meet up. Suyin is like, oh, you can stay here, you can do this, you can do that. And her sister's like, wait, time out. How about I just visit and I don't wreck the place next time? And she's like, sure, whatever. And they hug it out, and it's nice. But for the build-up that this episode had, the question that I had to answer, it was not worthy of all of the angst and drama that we had in episode 5. It was not. The conclusion that we get is satisfactory at best. It's not excellent. It's just good, okay? It's fine for what it is, but it's not as good as it could be. This episode is really two things. It's that, and Korra starts to learn how to metal bend, which is good. She's the first Avatar to ever learn how to metal bend. Now, hang on. This is something that I take issue with. Why is it that Aang never learned how to metal bend? Toph was right there in the city with him. I mean, and it's revealed that the two of them had a friendship till he died for 70 years. 70 years passed. He never learned how to metal bend. You would think that as the Avatar, learning an advanced bending technique like throwing lightning or blood bending with water or metal bending with earth, that would be a useful thing that the Avatar would be able to use. Now, I know the Avatar has limitless cosmic energy that they can just channel into their bending. Great. But you know what? I still remember Azula serving his ass up on a plate with a lightning bolt while he was in the Avatar state. So, I would think that some of those advanced bending techniques might be useful. I don't know. I don't know why Aang never learned any advanced bending techniques. It seems that that was something that he lacked the whole time. And speaking of advanced bending techniques, let me talk about Zahir. Because he appears in this episode ever so briefly, and oh my god. They explain nothing. They explain nothing about his powers. Basically he and his group, someone on Twitter aptly named them the Red Lilies. So the Red Lilies are escaping, that's what we're going to call them from now. The Red Lily is escaping Republic City after the incident at the Air Temple. And the Earthbender, I don't know his name, he turns the bridge into molten lava, which is with his earthbending, which is cool. And then they're sitting outside Republic City. Zahir is meditating. He opens his eyes and he goes, I know where the Avatar is, the Metal Clan. Time out. Time out! You're saying that you had the ability to find her the entire time just by sitting and meditating for an hour or so. What was the entire point of infiltrating the Air Temple then? What did you gain? It completely knocks that plot out of the air. The only point that now serves is to show us that he is an expert at airbending. Which brings me to my next point. He is advanced airbending in this scene. The airbending he is doing is referenced in episode 4 with episode 3 or 4 with Ba Sing Se, where Jinora basically tells Kai the reason that she can project her spirit is because she is using some advanced airbending and spirit bending techniques. Now apparently Zahir can do it. He can find Korra hundreds of miles away. She's hundreds of miles away in the middle of the Earth Kingdom. What? How did he get these powers? Listen, at this point, he had to have either studied underneath a lion turtle, or he had to have studied underneath the Avatar himself. There is no other explanation for how he knows the things he knows, not just about airbending, but about airbending culture. It's, oh my gosh. Stop teasing us. Tell us about our villains. Tell us their motivations. Tell us how they got to this point. Because you know what? It's not just necessary information to your plot. It is integral information to your plot. The reasons for your bad guys doing what they do is absolutely necessary. It's what elevates your show from a good show to a great show. Because when you have a backstory for your villains, it lets us, the audience, interact with them and relate to them and say, oh, well, you know what? Maybe they have a point doing this. Look, I trust Lord Zuko to the ends of the Avatar universe. I trust him completely. But him saying that they simply want to kill the Avatar is not the entire story. There's another side to that story that we're not getting. Tell us. Tell us what the other side of that story is. We desperately need it. Come on, guys. Stop teasing us. It's infuriating is what it is. He's basically turning into Superman. He can basically do whatever he wants with airbending and no consequences, no training, nothing. He just can do it. He can just do whatever he wants. It is insanity. Oh man. The Zahir, no. I'm putting an end to this right now. You tell us what happened with Zahir. I will stop watching this series. I promise. And the next episode, episode 7, it's entitled The Original Airbenders. You think that this is where, after dropping the fact that Zahir can apparently spirit bend, you think that this is where we would learn his backstory, right? No. This is a break episode. This is an episode that takes a break from the main storyline, so that we can go and we can visit the Airbender plot and see how that's shaping up with Tenzin, which is fine. That's something that we need to do. Unless it's going to be an overarching thing for the rest of the series and it's going to go into season 4. That's something that we need. We need to see the Airbender plot move forward. We can't just devote everything to Korra, 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 Korra. No, no. We do need to see this big thing that they introduced get slightly resolved a bit. And it's fine. It's wonderful to see Tenzin, his arc as a teacher. It's nice to see all the airbending teaching techniques that they go through, like balancing, climbing the obstacle course. That's wonderful. And Boomy plays a big part in this episode. It's basically his fault. Everything that happens in this episode is his fault. Tenzin was basically having problems training the airbenders and getting them interested. So Boomy suggests rigid discipline, which he fails to realize suddenly applies to him. And basically, you see Tenzin, the lemur trainer, the drill sergeant, and it's very funny that they invent a few villains at the end who are basically there to round up sky bison and sell them in Ba Sing Se as food. So Jinora and Kai get captured while they're down there looking at the air bison babies. It's, you know what, they've really slowed down their love plot. So you know what, I'm slightly more okay with it. I still think it's stupid. I mean, like, but it is played for some laughs. Like when someone says, "Where's Jinora?" Oh, Tenzin basically asks where Jinora is. Tenzin's like, "Oh, I saw her down with her boyfriend looking at the air bison." Boyfriend? It's like, oh, Tenzin, you're so clueless. But no, but it's fine. That's the main conflict. All the airbenders then have to go and use their airbending and work together to get them all back, and they do. It's a standard story plot point for uniting the fractured the fractured group of around one common cause and getting them all to work together. I mean, it's a standard thing that you see, because after all that training, the airbenders want to go home. Boomy decides he quits. He doesn't want to be an airbender. So, and then the two of them get kidnapped. Uh-oh, we all got to work together. It's your standard. Let's round them up. Right? So yeah, it's a nice episode. And it's nice to see the airbender plot. The thing is, can we really afford to take a break? Especially episode-wise. Like, I could see if we had episodes 5, 6 together, and then we needed a break. Episode 7 would have been, like, if someone was watching this, that seems to be how they've constructed this series. If someone was watching this all at once, it would be heavy, episodes 3 and 4, break, heavy, episode 7, break, and I suppose that's what episode 8 is also going to be, another part of the break. That's fine, but remember, these things are spaced out a week apart. We have an entire week to recover after what we've seen. We don't really need breaks. We need to continue with whatever we're doing. If you want to take a break, like, between episode 5 and 6, if you had devoted 5 to 10 minutes and cut between the Korra plot and the Airbender plot, that would have been a nice break in between exposition. And that you really could, what else you would have been able to do is you would have been able to parallel all of your stories, right? So that in the end, when you wrap them all up, it's like, oh, I see where these things came from, and that's how that works, etc., etc., right? But I don't know. It seems like they're shooting for the middle with these two episodes, and it's not good. It's not up to snuff. It's not up to what we saw in the first few episodes. Up to episode 5, I would say it is not up to the quality of what we had. And I hope that this is like Bato, the Water Tribe. I hope that this is a fluke and that it goes back up to being very high quality. We're probably not going to hear about Zahir until episode 9, because episode 8 naturally has to go with episode 7. So that's a thing that's going to happen. I know it's so frustrating. When you hear the words the original airbenders, you think, okay, air nomads. That's how Zahir got his stuff. Nope, it's not about him at all. It doesn't even feature a cameo. But oh well. Oh well. That was these 2 episodes. That's my review. We can get into the discussion now. Alright guys, so this is the discussion portion of this review. If you skipped ahead, thank you, welcome. I hope you enjoy what I have to say, and I also hope that you enjoy what my commenters and fans have had to say. I've got the best commenters in the world. They're very good at what they do, and I can only hope that they keep getting better. This week we've got our 2 regulars, Juan Rodriguez and The Real Bucky, and quite a few tweets as a matter of fact. So I'm going to go through the tweets first, and then we're going to get into the YouTube comments, because quite frankly normally that really takes a long time. Tweets, they're short, they're sweet, we can get through them fairly easily. So the first one comes from Ryan Croft. He's at Ryan_J_Croft. That's C-R-O-F-T. Ryan spelled like Ryan. And he's actually a really, really big Korra fan. He live tweeted me through the entire episode 5 of what he thought, and he came up with some really good observations, and I'm very happy to share them. So, Ryan says, synchronized dancing, extreme air hockey, sculpture. It's great to see the different arts and sports metal bending has birthed. That is very interesting, and good eye, because as much as I was watching this episode to critique it, I did not catch that in episode 5. And in terms of earthbending culture, with this particular series, in the Airbender series, we got quite a bit of what the culture of the Earth Kingdom was, the Fire Kingdom was, water, everything. We got really the flavor of those cultures because we spent so much time in each season learning about the bending and the history behind it and just everything. This season, we haven't gotten that much. Season 1, or this series I should say, we haven't gotten that much. Season 1 really seemed to be concerned about what the culture of Republic City was. And Season 2, while it started out with what the culture of the Water Tribe was, it kind of veered off, and we didn't really get to see as much as we should have in order to get a real sense of what's going on there. But Season 3, we really have dived into the culture. And it's good because if you look at something like Ba Sing Se, and then you look at the Metal City, it's a wonderful contrast between the two, because here's Ba Sing Se, the same as it has always been. The Dai Li run everything, the king is at the top, the king or queen is at the top, and they've got a firm grasp, and you've got the 3 rings. It seems that nothing has changed within the city. It literally exists outside of time and space. It is this one place that always has been and always will be. And then you've got the metal bending city, where people are encouraged to basically be the best they can be, and you just see how far they've advanced, as opposed to Ba Sing Se, which has just stagnated. It's been stagnant since the last series, which apparently took place over 70 years ago. It's been the same for 70 years, and was probably the same since forever before that. I mean, just the idea of the rings. It's like, okay, you have your place, you stay in that place, and you do not try to leave. If you do try to leave, the Dai Li will throw you in prison and brainwash you. Metal Bender City, completely different attitude, and it just shows you how much more advanced they are. And you're right. It is wonderful to see all these different things. That a new form of bending, which it really is, it's a new form of earth bending, really did manage to birth. And very good eye, very good observation. Brian, good job. Very good job. Okay, the next one, this also comes from Ryan. He said, I think someone out there in Korra Nation should write an article about Ming Hua, phantom limb syndrome, and water bending. Now that, again, is very interesting, because the concept of bending, if you think about it, just always and forever throughout the whole, both series, has always been, okay, you're practicing movements in order to control your chi, in order to use it to move the elements, right? You're moving everything around you, be it air, with the power of your body. But what happens if you lose that particular element, you lose that particular ability? I mean, in Airbender, there were stories about how earthbenders would have their hands and their feet scorched just so that they would not be able to earthbend, to feel their chi moving, to feel the earth beneath them, and bend in that way. That's a horrific thought if you think about it. So the idea of somebody not having arms and not being able to thus bend, but then still being able to use their idea of, for those of you who don't know, phantom limb syndrome is basically your brain is hardwired to think you have particular limbs, and if you lose those limbs, it doesn't suddenly turn on a switch. It's like, okay, you don't have that limb anymore. No, it still keeps thinking that you have that limb, and if you think, okay, pick this up, and you absentmindedly go to pick it up with the right hand you don't have, your brain is going to follow through with that movement, even, and is going to think, hey, you picked up this object. That's where something like phantom limb pain comes from, because if your brain is not receiving any signals from the hand that no longer is there, it's going to interpret that as, oh, something's wrong. So then you get pain from a hand that doesn't exist, right? That's essentially what phantom limb syndrome is. And the idea that, okay, a bender would be able to just use the power of their mind, the thing that the brain has hardwired in there, to then be able to bend and then use that to replace the limbs that she no longer had. It's a phenomenal concept, and kudos to the writers. I mean, we need a little bit more backstory to that, but other than that, wonderful idea, very good concept, and just it's just extremely interesting. And you're right. You know what? I hope that we get a mini-series with Minghua, and we find out all about her and her bending style and just everything that she does. Because, quite frankly, we haven't had any explanation, as I mentioned, about any of our villains yet. So, backstory would be good, and that would be very helpful in that regard. All right. So, very good, Ryan. You guys should go follow him. He's excellent at this, and he loves Korra. He loves Korra like no other. All right. Our next one comes from Kieran, who is at Kieran_writes. Kieran is Kiran. Now, she is a activist for, I don't want to say homosexuals, because that's a derogatory term. She's an activist for gays and lesbians in the media, and she's very passionate about Korra and Asami, and wants to see the two of them have a relationship with each other, a non-traditional relationship with each other, not just two girlfriends talking and bouncing ideas off each other. And we had a very interesting conversation, and I'm not going to read it verbatim, but I'm basically going to go through some of the points that we covered. Okay, so I basically asked her if she feels that Asami's in danger of losing her place due to Lin and Suyin being two extremely strong female characters that have been brought in. And she said that she did say she could see this happening, but the main conversation really starts with when I said, well, we are promised a strong Asami story in Season 2, but she ended up becoming a sexy lamppost for Mako to save. For those of you who don't know, Sexy Lamppost is a Michael Bayism, in which, in Michael Bay movies, all of his female characters are very good looking, very beautiful, gorgeous to look at, but they're just there. They're treated as objects. They're there for a male protagonist to basically take and place here, there, everywhere, so that they fit the scene, and that if ever they're in danger, he just basically picks them up and carries them to safety. That is the idea of the sexy lamppost. And she replied, which is why, and for the Korrasami, they seem to be side-eyeing in Season 3 so far. Asami is great for hashtag SDEM and for kids. And there's nothing in that statement that I do not agree with. I agree with you 100%. It would be wonderful to see a same-sex couple in a cartoon. It would be a very bold statement for the cartoon to make. It would be it would be a very modern view for them to take, that yeah, you know what, we just don't need to stick every male and female character that we have together until we run out of options. There's other stuff that we could do. However, excuse me. However, there are several problems with this. First of all, let's look at the company we're dealing with. We're dealing with Nickelodeon and Viacom. And forget getting this past the censor. It probably would not even occur to the head writers that or if it did, they would probably think, you know what, we would never get it past our bosses, that sticking two strong female characters together could be construed as a positive thing to do in your show. And it would actually reel in viewers, it would talk about something, and it would basically say, hey, you know what, we are modern. But you know what, everyone at the top, they're all old guys from the 60s. They're not going to budge on any of that. There's not a snowball's chance in hell that that they would ever consider allowing that as a possibility for their show. And also, just the way they've set it up, it's possible that they could do that with Asami. Like, they set it up that, okay, here's a girl that Korra has basically established. You know what? Here's a girl that she gets to be with, she can be friends with, and then slowly it could build from there as a relationship, which is fine, and it would show that you don't have to just have guys, girls stuck together. Fine. But, and I say this is a very strong but, just with season 1 and season 2, I feel that the characters and the audience are extremely burned out in terms of relationships. They've exhausted all the pairs, right? Just with all the bad relationships between Korra and Asami, Korra and Mako, or sorry, not Korra and Asami, Mako and Asami, Mako and Korra, Mako, Asami and Bolin a little bit, Bolin and Korra, which happened in season 1. Just the way that everything went south there. The place that the characters are in now is not a place where they'd be particularly open to a romantic relationship. I mean, the two of them are just dealing with a breakup that they just came off of. I mean, it would be, at this point in the series, it would simply be writing it in for the sake of writing it in. And that's not good. It would just mean that at some point the relationship would crash, and if we're going to show that kind of relationship, we want to show it in a healthy, positive light, not in a way that could be negatively construed. Also, as an audience member, it's not that I don't want to. I don't care who they date. I'm straight, but I'm not narrow-minded. I'm open to all the possibilities for these characters. If Mako meets a nice guard or someone who he decides he wants to date, that's fine. If he wants to date one away or wing or whatever. If he wants to date whoever, fine. If Korra and Asami decide, hey, you know what, boys are dumb, we should date, that's fine. I don't care. But just the way that they've been trying to shove love stories down our throat with the last 2 seasons, I'm burnt out on that. I personally want to see the characters grow as friends first before we have any idea of a romantic interest. This is why I'm so opposed to a Kai Janora thing. It's just the writer's silly attempt of giving us, okay, you know what, you didn't like the love story in season 1, you didn't like the love story in season 2, here's another love story in season 3 that you just might like. No. Stop. Just stop. You've proven that you cannot write a good love story. Just stop. It's bad enough. It's bad enough that we had to sit through seasons 1 and seasons 2. Don't make us have to watch this in season 3. It's just stop. stop your lame attempts of trying to just put characters together. Putting characters together for the sake of putting them together, no. I'm burned out, and so's everyone else. Don't do it. There's a third point here, actually, as to why it probably would not happen, and it doesn't have to. Here's the thing: the show is great at covering very controversial topics. In season 1, we had what does it mean to be in power and have power over people who do not have power, right? And it really was the struggle of democracy. Democracy versus dictatorship, who knows best, all that other kind of stuff. In the end, it seemed to be like, you know what? If people are going to live together, they need to have a representation, equal representation, and you need to have someone who speaks for everyone. Otherwise, what's going to happen is people are going to be able to come in, they're going to be able to sow discord, and they're going to be able to destroy your power structure and just cause chaos in your city. That was essentially what season 1 was about. It was about politics and power playing and all these very heavy issues that people don't like to talk about. Or if they do, they get very this way or this way. Season 2, they had an opportunity for a really big discussion on what does it mean to live in a secular society versus a religious society, because you've got the two water tribes. Northern Water Tribe, where essentially the gods live, right? You've got the spirit of the ocean and the moon spirit, Yue. They both live in the pool of tears up there with the Northern Water Tribe. There's no doubt that there are gods in this Avatar universe. They're all around. It's just that the North is so close to them that literally they've built their whole city and community around that, and they've never really been cut off from that. The South, on the other hand, went through the 100 Years of War. They were scattered all over the place. They were then rebuilt, and despite the fact that they rely on the exact same spiritualism for waterbending, they're separated by an entire world. They are literally a world away from the source of their spiritual power. So really, they have at best a vague connection to whatever their spirit gods are. And they almost tried to do this when Unalaq stood up and he said, this festival was meant to celebrate the spirits. It's strange to see what it's turned into, etc., etc., etc. And then they start off with that plot, and then Varric takes that plot and throws it out a window when he stands up and he says something silly. And we never speak about it again. So that was a good idea that they had, that they could have explored, that they did not dive into. And I'm sorry that they didn't do it, but at this point, there's nothing we can do about that, right? Season 2 has passed, and may it rest in peace, where it is buried. Season 3 is dealing with the idea of what does it mean to be part of a race versus what does it mean to be part of a culture, and how does that define you as a person. And this is a very divisive topic. When people talk about this, when intellectuals debate this topic, they get very polarized and they get very vehement. The words that they say to each other rival YouTube comments. It is astounding. And really, because if you think about it, airbending is a racial trait, right? Each of the four races have their own particular bending trait. Airbenders, they have airbending, etc., right? So for the people who have gotten airbending in the Earth Kingdom, we don't know if it's Fire Kingdom and Water Kingdom as well, but we assume that they're there, right? And we'll deal with those in season 4. Somewhere in their history, probably at the dissolution of the Lion Turtle cities, there would have been some mixing, and whatever genes have been passed down, now these people who live in the Earth Kingdom, they have these particular airbender genes, and they're now expressing themselves thanks to harmonic convergence. So racially, they belong to this particular group, but culturally, they've been raised for thousands of years in the Earth Kingdom. These are firmly Earth Kingdom people. So the way that they're exploring the idea of what does it mean to be a part of one culture versus one race, how do these two cultures then how can they combine to make one whole person. It's very interesting the way that they're doing it. It's funny, it's unique. It really is a unique way of tackling this issue, and I applaud it. So when you have an issue like that, on top of all the interpersonal drama that seems to be going on in this series, and then add in whatever villainous stuff is supposed to be, the villainous overtones that are supposed to go on with Zahir and his group, which would be nice to hear about. I really don't think they have time to explore a same-sex couple relationship. It would just be too much to fit into one particular season. Maybe in season 4, maybe that's what they're building up to. If we, the fans, demand it, that's something that we could see as a side plot. But right now, just where the series is, the characters are not ready for it, the fans are not ready for it, the company certainly is not ready for it, and it would just be too much, too fast. And that's really how I feel about this issue. And that's essentially what we said in this discussion. Now, she also has a journal that I'm going to post in the discussion. You can go there, you can comment on what she has to say. She's a very intelligent woman, and I encourage you, go check Kieran out. She's very excellent at what she does. Thank you for your wonderful comments and the very nice discussion we had. It was a pleasure. Alright, moving on. Her tweet is Avatar Legend of Korra worth watching? Well, my dear, that's an interesting question. I would say yes, Avatar Legend of Korra is worth watching. However, just follow me here. If you've seen the original Airbender series, Korra can't hold a candle to it. It tries really, really hard, but it just is not Airbender. Airbender was a perfect coming together of just all the right elements. And if you watch it, you will be disappointed, simply because season 1, there's a 70-year gap between the events of Airbender and the events of Korra. And the equivalent would be if somebody was to write a book and then write a sequel to that book, except it took place in a completely different time period. All the characters you knew were either gone, and then the author came out and said, well, you know what, if you go and you watch this TV show, it'll explain everything. It's the equivalent thing, right? That's exactly what they've done. They basically said, okay, here's Airbender, here's Legend of Korra. If you want to know the bridging story, here's a series of graphic novels that haven't all even been written yet. So we don't even know what the bridging story is. So that's essentially the equivalent of what's going on, and it's baffling in terms of storytelling. But it's a product of the new age. So what else would you expect? What else would you expect from people who absolutely need it now? That's including myself. I'm one of those people who absolutely needs it now. I mean, it's why Game of Thrones is doomed to fail. So, but that's a completely different conversation. But if you're a first-time person who's never heard of Airbender, who's never heard of Legend of Korra, I'd say yes, watch Legend of Korra. Watch the first season, because the first season is good. Don't watch the second season. Watch parts of the second season. Watch the beginnings part 1, the beginnings part 2, and episode 10, where they're in the spirit world and you get to see Uncle Iroh. Watch those, because that basically tells you everything you need to know about season 2. And then watch season 3 all the way up through here, because these are good episodes. You've got strong female characters, you've got genuinely funny scenes with good characters. It works, it really does. You've got culture and you've got big questions being asked. It's wonderful. So yes, I would say watch The Legend of Korra. Okay, next tweet, and this is our last one. No, it's not. We just had one come in. Okay, hang on. We just had one come in. That'll be next. So our second to last tweet comes from Tiny Worm Treadmill. This is at Miss Secret Admirer, MESSECRETADMIRER. Yep. Okay. She says, so how come no one on AV Club has observed that the Metal Clan family all talked like Speed Racer? Speed Racer? What the heck is Speed? I actually had to ask her, what is Speed Racer? Because I thought she was referring to the movie from, I think, 2010, which absolutely nobody saw. that had that character that looked like Zac Efron but wasn't Zac Efron. But she was actually referring to a TV show from 1967, which means absolutely no one has seen it. That's why no one referred to it. And I watched it. The middle clan kind of talks like the people in Speed Racer, but while it's very anime style, I would say that it's much less. I don't see the two of them talking in a similar, or speaking, I should say, in a similar manner. I don't see it. I really don't. Korra seems to be its own thing, and Speed Race, it could be similar. I could be completely wrong, but I looked at it. I don't see it. All right. And our very, very last tweet that comes from Matthew Monahan. Matthew Monahan. Huh. That's odd. It's spelled Matthew Monahan, but then it's Matthew Monahan. So that's M-O-N-A-M-A-N. So Matthew, like regular Matthew, and then Monahan. Okay, he said, I liked a @YouTube video from @89Technical. Thank you. Legend of Korra Season 3 Episodes 1, 2, and 3 reaction. Thank you. Thank you for liking the YouTube video, and what in particular did you like about that YouTube video? Tell me, because this is a question I have. I make 2 videos, one reaction video and one review video. I get more than for this video that he's talking about. I've had over 700 people at this particular time watch that video, and I've had 50 people, 550, watch the review, and I've had even less people watch the second review. Probably 10 times as many people watch the reaction video as the second review. Why? Why? What is so good about my reaction videos? Is it the things I say when stuff happens? I mean, this is what you should be here for. The discussion, the people talking to one another, not some idiot yelling at a screen. Come on, you're smarter than that. You're YouTubers. So that's the last tweet. Okay, let's get into the YouTube comments. Alright, so technically we have 5, but 3 of them are pretty much the exact same thing. So, okay. From last week, from the Talking Thrones episode, Juan Rodriguez. Hello, Juan. I know I said that this was not going to go into the last review, but then I read it, and I realized, oh no, this is a Korra. This is a Korra comment on a Game of Thrones video, so it happens. It happens. Okay, so he says, thanks for reading my comments. You're welcome. Now, I know you have issues for Game of Thrones series, but hey, at least they're better than Korra as a whole series. Well, look, I'm not going to get into that argument because that is a long, complex, and we don't have time. We do not have time to get into that. Alright, pay attention because I'm only going to do this once. Game of Thrones is a series with a single main writer who controls everything, and who has created just his own playground with a cast of thousands. And the people who are creating the show are basically following his word like he is Jesus Christ himself. And whatever rewrites they do make, they make it so that it's a part of its own series, and they have just the time and the budget and just this whole thing to play with. So much so that they've created a story where it doesn't have one main plot. It has 7 main plots. And you, the viewer, are allowed to pick whichever main plot you want, watch that one, and you don't have to care about the rest of it. Like, I personally like Daenerys, as you well know, and I like Sansa's plot. Everything else, I don't care. I'm not that into Peter Dinklage as everybody else is. And I don't care if Jon Snow lives or dies. I don't care. I honestly don't. Game of Thrones or not Game of Thrones, Korra, on the other hand, has 6 writers, all of whom don't seem to know, in general, where the show is going. And as such, they all write their own thing, and then they try to just cut and paste it back together into some kind of cohesive format. And you can tell, simply if you look back at Season 2, the way that some of the stuff meanders, you can tell that these were writers who, one, didn't know what they were supposed to do, so they just wrote their own thing and then said, well, we'll paste together and it'll vaguely stick. Now that they've reduced the amount of writers they have for season 3, and they're a much more cohesive, tight-knit group, I do think that the show has done so much better. But here's the thing. They have 20 minutes in which to tell their story, and 13 episodes. Game of Thrones has forever to tell their story in an entire hour, every single week. Sometimes even more than an hour, because I've seen episodes that go an hour and a half long, like the season premiere, the season finale. And they have a cast of thousands that they can just swap in and out here and there wherever they want. Korra, on the other hand, has a cast of hundreds, but every time they add a new character, they add a new story for that character. And what happens is you end up compressing the characters so much that they flatten into two-dimensional tropes of themselves. And this is a problem for a show like Korra, because unlike Game of Thrones, which is such a big cultural phenomenon that people all over the world, the entire world is watching Game of Thrones. If they lose 5 people like me because they decide to axe a character that almost no one cares about, well, that's fine. Or if they decide to suddenly make a character into an idiot and that pisses off 100,000 people, guess what? There are 10 million others watching. That's like less than 1% of what their audience is. Korra, on the other hand, is a much smaller show, and when they flatten characters, when they shorten scenes for exposition, when they do all these different things that make the show bad, if they lose 10,000 people, that's like a big percentage of their audience. We do not have that many people watching Legend of Korra, not the way that they watched Airbender, at least. So when they screw up, and trust me, these guys screw up hard sometimes, it can be disastrous. He says, by the way, I believe there are leaked episodes of Korra already with English subtitles on YouTube. I don't remember the channel, but check it out. I do remember the channel. It no longer exists. Copyright claimed out of existence. Also, well, that's what I get for wanting to eat food before I decide to make my next video, and wait for you guys to put up some comments. Oh well. C'est la vie. Better luck next season, right? Our next comment comes from Juan. He says, I appreciate your theory of how Aemon could have taken away people's menu. Thank you. But as long as Bright don't really explain how he did it, it will remain a mystery. True? Now, about Zahir. I begin to think that Zahir might have trained with someone who really is a master airbender, who not only knows airbending but also the culture. If Zahir did not train with Tenzin or Aang, then who? I believe that Zahir might have trained with an air nomad who survived Sozin's war. I never believed the fact that all the air nomads were killed during Aang's time. Well, here's the problem with that. I do believe the fact that all the air nomads were killed during Aang's time, and here's why. Afterwards, after the war ended, 70 years passed, and no air nomads ever came forward. No one ever spotted an air nomad. If there was one hiding somewhere, like a mystic or something, someone, somewhere would have stumbled across him, because airbending in that world is not something that you see every day. I mean, the fact that there were only 4 was well known. It's like as I said, it's like one of those martial arts that you hear about that only like a dozen people in the world have ever mastered. So I do really feel that there are no air nomads left except for Aang. I mean, there was a theory that the Dai Li were breeding air nomads, but probably not. After Sozin's war, any who had been imprisoned, they would have been released by Prince Zuko. Any who are here, there, everywhere, they would have found them. Someone somewhere would have said something that, hey, we have an air nomad here, we have an air nomad there. So, well, that simply is, that's just the way it is, I'm afraid, and there's nothing to explain that. The rest of these are all about Zahir. So, Real Bucky, he also said, my theory for Zahir is that he trained with Guru Lahim, like Obi-Wan, now that you mentioned Zahir having a spiritual teacher. Well, you're correct. He does mention Guru Lahim quite a bit, but there's a problem with this theory, and I'm going to pull it up in the Avatar Wikia right now. Here we go. Guru Lahim. Guru Lahim was an air nomad renowned and a renowned poet who lived at the Northern Air Temple around 3829 BG. For those of you who don't know, BG is before the genocide, before the Air Nomad genocide. So either Guru Lahim or Zahir are the oldest living Avatar characters to date, including the lion turtles. It's just not possible. It's just not possible. It was a good theory, Bucky, but it just isn't possible for him to have trained with an air nomad. But here's the thing: with him now being able to spiritually detect where the Avatar is, like, unless he picked this all up from poetry, he either had to have trained with the Avatar or with a lion turtle. And I'm guessing that if he trained with a lion turtle, this is the same lion turtle that trained Amon how to spirit bend. Cause, my God, Amon learning how to spirit bend, I'm guessing he could have worked that. Like, he could have found someone who taught him how to chi bend, and then he used his blood bending and chi bending to figure out how to take away someone's bending permanently, right? So that's something that's workable in the Avatar universe. We know that there are people who know how to chi block, and that it becomes a very widely used thing with the Dai Li and the Kyoshi warriors, whoever, right? That's something that exists and that could easily be picked up. This stuff that he knows, oh man, it's I don't even think there is a guru who would be able to train him in the ways of airbending, the way that he knows how to airbend. It's insane, really, because he's using techniques that they're only coming up with now, and it's baffling to me. So that's in the comments. It's the real Bucky. Don't worry, I'm working on the list. I'm very sick right now. I can't kill myself to make this. All right, but I promise you, it will come. So this has been my review and discussion. I will see you guys next week, and I hope that you enjoy watching this, and I hope you enjoy watching the episodes. I mean,